So now my dough, we're back to puff pastry, and my dough has rested in the refrigerator for 30 minutes. So now it will not be so elastic and I'll be able to manipulate the dough. So now we are going to incorporate the butter block. Please be certain to use some flour, bread flour preferably, as you dust your board. And if you don't have bread flour, you could just as well use all-purpose. I'm going to gently press my dough just to sort of stretch it out. And now, remember, here's my butter block. I've got to be able to fit this into it. I also want the thickness of the butter and the dough to be about the same thickness. So usually we are looking at about between a 1/4 and 1/8 of an inch in thickness. Closer to 1/8. How about that? So you see that I'm just sort of manipulating with my hands a bit, and I want to make certain that this is squared off. This is going to cover the butter block is going to cover 2/3 of your dough. So now it's wide enough. I just need to stretch it out just a tad bit more. If the dough is too thin, you will lose butter. When I say you'll lose butter, it'll just sort of open up on you. So we don't want that to happen. And again, let's do a quick measurement. And I'm at 12, so my butter is going to be perfect. So I have about 12 inches here, and I'm not going to go any further. Okay, and my butter is not super soft, and it's also not super cold. Again, butter could be like glass, and you don't want shards of glass tearing open your dough. So I'm going to just do a little manipulating and spreading it close to the edge. So that's 2/3 of the way covered. My section of dough that is not covered is going to be folded over first. Okay? And now the other side. So that is what we call an envelope fold, okay? Or a 3-fold. And I'm not going to do this fold again. I'm going to be doing 4 folds later. I'm going to need some some flour. Spread it across. Be generous with it. You have a brush so that you can brush off the excess. Again, press gently so the butter doesn't go oozing out all over the place. And now I'm going to roll it. I'm also going to just give it one turn just to widen it a bit. In culinary school, it was one of my favorite dough to make, or preparations to make. I used it on my final exam, and my instructor thought it was very impressive. I thought it was too, but it was more important that he thought it was impressive because I needed to graduate and get the grade, and he was giving me the grade. So you can see the butter. It's spreading out nicely inside of my dough. Don't work in warm conditions. Please don't work in warm conditions when you're making this dough. The butter will melt out and get absorbed into the dough. We don't want that because we need layers. Remember, it's going to form 1,000 layers. Imagine that. So a part of your project is, your grade is to count each layer and see if that's what you got or not, because that would not be a good idea. All right, so I have this rolled out, and it's rolled out to about the thickness that I'm looking for. Straight corners. Do everything you can to make sure, you know, this is nice and straight. Now, all that extra flour must be brushed off. So get a really good sweep going. And we are going to do what's called a four-fold, or a book fold. So bring it in, get rid of all that flour. So I'm squaring it off, making sure that I have nice edges and corners, and then I'm leaving a finger space in between so that I will be able to fold the dough over. And it will lay nice and flat. Okay? So finger, fold over, and that is your first fold. And how are you going to remember? You're going to drop that down. And I'll show you another way to jot it down. You couldn't do this technique that I'm going to show you with the Danish or croissant dough because it had yeast and it was constantly rising, fermenting, right? So I'm going to mark it, press my finger in there, and that's an indication that it's had its first turn, okay? Alternatively, when you wrap it in plastic wrap, mark the outside and also keep track of the time that your dough is in there. And I'm going to get rid of that brush because the hairs are coming out. All right, so there's my mark, but you could just as well make a 1, and I'm going to chart the time so that I know this needs to rest in the refrigerator for 30 minutes. If it goes beyond 30 minutes, that's perfectly fine. I will roll this dough out again another 3 times for a total of 4 four-folds or 4 book folds before I'm able to utilize this dough.